Good day, students. Good morning. You're welcome to LODS lecture series. I'll be taking you through a quick tour on ACT 304 Principle of Auditing. This video is for study session 4, items communicated by auditors and the relevant legislation on the performance of an audit. Do enjoy your learning as we go through this video. Introduction. In the previous study session, the responsibilities of auditors were expatiated. These responsibilities cannot be carried out unless the auditor communicated with relevant parties. Therefore, communication and the items communicated are very essential in this study session. Learning outcome for study session 4. After you might have studied this session, you should be able to explain the items communicated by the auditor. You should be able to examine the impact of relevant legislation on the performance of an audit. And you should be able to discuss the responsibility of directors in relation to audits. Items communicated by auditor. Items communicated by auditor can be written or oral. If oral, the communication should be documented in the working papers. Auditors' relationship with third parties. Communication of audit matter with those charged with governance. Communication of audit matter with those charged with governance is explained in ISA 260, International Standard of Auditing. This ISA 260 establishes the standards and provides guidance on communication of audit matters arising from the audit of financial statements between the auditor and those who charge with governance of an entity. These communications relates to audit matters of governance interest as defined hereunder. The auditors communicate audit matters of governance interest arising from audit of financial statement with those charged with governance of an entity. Governance is the term used to describe the role of persons entrusted with the supervision, control, and direction of an entity. Those who are charged with governance ordinarily are accountable for ensuring that the entity achieves its objectives. With regards to reliability of financial reporting, effectiveness and efficiency of operations, compliance with applicable laws, and reporting to interested parties. Those charged with governance include management only when it performs such functions. Audit matters of governance interest are those matters that arise from the audit of financial statements and, in the opinion of the auditor, are both important and relevant to those charged with governance in overseeing the financial reporting and disclosure process. The auditor is not required to design audit procedure for specific purpose of identifying matters of governance interest. Modifications and impact on the audit report. The following table summarizes the different types of modified opinion that can arise. We have the nature of circumstances. Is either it is material but not pervasive, or material and pervasive. So 1, the financial statement are materially misstated. If the financial statement are materially misstated but not pervasive, we have what is referred to as qualified opinion. But if the financial statement are materially misstated but pervasive, we have what is referred to as adverse opinion. If the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence and it is material but not pervasive, we have unqualified opinion. But if the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence and it is material and pervasive, we have what is referred to as disclaimer of opinion. Relevant persons. The auditor should determine the relevant persons who are charged with governance and with whom audit matters of governance interest are communicated. The structures of governance vary from country to country, reflecting cultural and legal backgrounds. This diversity makes it difficult to establish a universal identification of the persons who are charged with governance and with whom the auditor communicates audit matters of governance interest. The auditor uses judgment to determine those persons with whom audit matters of governance interest are communicated, taking into account the governance structure of the entity, the circumstances of the engagement, and any relevant legislation. The auditors also consider the legal responsibility of those persons. The relevant persons and entities with supervisory boards or with audit committees could be those bodies. Examining the impact of relevant legislations on the performance of audit. The Statement of Auditing Standard 120 covers consideration of law and regulations. The IFAC International Standard on Auditing 250 also covers consideration of law and regulations in an audit of financial statements. In planning an audit, the auditor should recognize that non-compliance by the entity with law or regulations may materially affect the financial statement. ISA 250. Consequently, the auditor should plan the audit procedure to include A, an assessment of the compliance of the entity with laws or regulations affecting the business of the entity, and B, an evaluation and report on the results thereof. SAS 120. SAS 120 provides the following definitions. Non-compliance with law or regulation refers to acts, omission, or commission by the entity being audited, either intentional or unintentional, which are contrary to law comprising common law and statute or regulations. Such acts include transactions entered into by or in the name of the entity or on its behalf by its directors or employees. Non-compliance with law or regulation does not include personal misconduct unrelated to business activities of the entity by the entity directors or employees. It does not also include civil wrongs, for example, breach of duties in contracts or tort. Management means those persons who may include directors who have executive responsibility for the conduct of the entity's operations and the preparation of its financial statements. Whether an act constitutes non-compliance with law or regulation is a legal determination that is ordinarily beyond the auditor's professional competence. However, auditors' training, experience, and understanding of the entity audit industry may enable them to recognize that some acts coming to their attention may constitute non-compliance with law or regulations. The determination as to whether a particular act constitutes non-compliance with law or regulation is generally based on the advice of an informed expert qualified to practice law, but ultimately can be determined only by a court of law. Laws and regulations vary considerably in their relations to the financial statement. Some laws and regulations relate directly to the preparation or the inclusion or the disclosure of specific items in the financial statement. Non-compliance with law or regulations may result in financial consequence for the entity, such as fines or litigation. The Central Bank of Nigeria Act and Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act (BOFIA) require auditors to report non-compliance with the law and fines paid in the process. Responsibility of directors. It is the responsibility of directors to take appropriate steps to provide reasonable assurance that the entity complies with law and regulations applicable to its activities. It's also the responsibility of the director to establish arrangements for preventing any compliance with law or regulations and detecting any error that occurs. Finally, it's also the responsibility of directors to prepare financial statement that gives a true and fair view of the state of affairs of a company and its profit or loss for the financial year. The assignment of particular responsibility to management or the audit process does not relieve the directors of this fundamental responsibility. In addition, directors and officers of companies have responsibility to provide information required by the auditors, to which they have a legal right of access under the Company Allied Matter Act, Cap. 20 LFN 2004. Responsibility of auditors. Prevention and detection. SARS 120 on consideration of law and regulation states that it is not the auditor's function to prevent non-compliance with law or regulation. The fact that an audit is carried out may, however, act as a deterrent. 2. Detection. The auditors plan, perform, and evaluate their audit work in order to have a reasonable expectation of detecting material misstatements in the financial statement of the entity audited. When doing so, they recognize that material misstatements may arise from non-compliance with law or regulation. We have come to the end of this study session. Hope to see you next class for study session 5, where we'll be discussing representations by management, independence of auditor, and rules of professional conduct. Thank you for listening.